Are you working with a real estate agent? Are you being represented? Do you know the answer to those questions? My name is Sean Larson, real estate broker, and let's tackle those and buckle up because we're about to cover a lot of ground. Okay, the first question, are you working with a real estate agent? And you probably said yes. Maybe a friend asked you, maybe another agent asked you, and you answered yes. What exactly did you mean by working with a real estate agent? Did you mean that you called one? Somebody called you. You went to a home showing with one. You stopped into an open house and talked to one, or maybe you actually have a written agreement with that agent. Which one of those, or several of those? Any of those? Or did you just say yes because you maybe thought about working with a real estate agent, but maybe haven't made it that far? Okay, we're going to come back to that question. Second question, are you being represented? Okay, those first four or so examples in that answer probably mean that you're not being represented, because if you are being represented, you are usually under a written agreement, and you would know that. So let's go way back to what it means to be represented. In daily life, who's your representative? You are. You go to the restaurant, you go to the store, no matter what your activity is, who is working on your behalf? You are. You are your own representative. You are there working on your own behalf. So if you are going to have representation during a real estate transaction, that person is going to work on your behalf. Okay, if you are not being represented, then you could just be working with a real estate agent. But that does not mean they are representing you or working on your behalf. So let's cover several different scenarios. And the disclaimer on this is that this is going to vary with each state, each region. If you're watching internationally, this is going to be very different in the country you're watching from. So there are several different relationships that take place in the real estate industry. And those have to do with what's called agency. And it's the relationship between the client or customer, depending if you're under agreement yet or not, and the agent. Okay, have you built a relationship there, usually with a written agreement, that shows that the agent is your representative? And with that comes a fiduciary responsibility with confidentiality. They are working on your behalf. They are fighting for your rights. In the example of a transaction, they're trying to get you the best deal. They are not trying to get the best deal for the other person in the transaction. So if you're the buyer, they are working on your behalf. They're not working on the seller's behalf. They're trying to win you the best deal. And vice versa. If the listing agent on a home is representing the seller, they are working on the seller's behalf. They're not trying to get a good deal for the buyer. So that's going to play a big part here in an example we talk about. Because if you go in several places and you speak to agents and you don't yet have a representation agreement with somebody, you might walk into maybe a model home. You might walk into an open house. You're not being represented at that point, and you walk in and you speak with an agent there who is usually representing the seller or maybe the builder in the example of a model home. Guess who they are not representing at that point? You. That's right. Now, you might think you're working with an agent, and technically you are, I guess, working with them, but they are not working for you. There's a big difference. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. Those agents are doing their job. They were hired to represent the party who hired them. So for a model home, the builder hired them. They are working on the builder's behalf. They are trying to get the best deal for the builder. They're trying to move that product. Same thing with a listing agent. The listing agent was hired by the seller. They're trying to get the best deal for the seller. They're trying to move that house and get it sold. So if you go in and speak directly to those agents, they are not working on your behalf. So just know that you are what's called an unrepresented buyer or an unrepresented customer, depending on your location there. So just know that they are working for those parties. If you want representation, you will then usually need your own agent to work on your behalf. Now, in some locations, there is going to be something called dual agency, and it's a scenario where one agent attempts to work on both parties' behalf. It's kind of a subject to debate. In some areas, it is common practice. In other areas, people don't understand how one person can advocate for two opposing parties. So that is up to you to decide on that scenario. That is called dual agency, as opposed to a single agency or a dedicated agent for one party. You are also going to find a relationship, or maybe lack of a relationship, called a transactional broker. And what that is somebody who can actually process the transaction. They can do all the paperwork, they can answer questions for everybody, but they usually don't have any clear representation for either party. Now, in some locations, they may have some loosely defined limited representation, but they're usually not advocating intensely for each side to get the best deal. They are usually there just to put the deal together, to handle the logistics, the paperwork. They can answer questions all you like. They should do that honestly and fairly, but they're not there to advocate for you. If you are wanting somebody to advocate for you and work on your behalf, try to get the best deal for you, you are actually looking for representation. So all of these play a different part in each market. You're going to experience different levels of that. The important thing is that you know which scenario you're in. So if you are a buyer and you go into a listing and you encounter somebody there who is the listing agent for that home, or like I said, a model home, and somebody's there repping the builder, just know that they are looking to get the best deal for those sellers. So if you go in there and maybe spill your life story about your situation, and you have, 50 buckets of cash, and you just share all these details, and they are not working on your behalf, that was probably an advantage to them to learn all that information. So it's best for you to know what the relationships are before you go spilling your story like that. And again, this is nothing against any party, any of the agents, because each agent was hired to do their job. So the listing agent is doing their job to move that product, and the builder's agent is doing the same thing. And if you want somebody to help you get the best deal, then you need representation if you feel that you cannot accurately represent yourself in that capacity. So those are just a few scenarios of how representation works. Be very aware of who you're speaking to, and just ask them, who are you representing? What part do you play? We have another video about open houses and who you might encounter there, because at open houses, quite often, you might be encountering somebody who is not the listing agent. It may simply be a host, and that host is hoping to recruit you as their client, whether it be for that house or other homes. So just clarify who you're speaking with there. So if you have any questions about agency, relationships, representation, how that all works, feel free to reach out to me. My name again is Sean Larson, real estate broker, and I hope you have a super day.